What the is leadership? Thought-provoking conversations with expert leadership scholars, exceptional leadership practitioners, and other extraordinary individuals. Good day. I'm Jonathan Kroll. I'm the founder and executive director and a master trainer with Leadership Trainer, and I am delighted for our conversation today with Dan Jenkins. Dan is the chair and an associate professor of leadership and organizational studies at the University of Southern Maine. And I'm going to read from my paper to make sure I get it all right. But he's the co-author of The Role of Leadership Educators, which is an absolutely phenomenal book. If you don't have this, get this book because it is absolutely fantastic for all of us in leadership education, training, and development. He's published over 40 articles and book chapters on leadership education. He's an award-winning speaker and facilitator. He's also the co-founder of the International Leadership Association's Leadership Education Academy, the associate editor of the Journal of Leadership Studies, and the co-host of the Leadership Educator podcast. What I want to say, aside from my notes, is Dan is the leadership educator. He devotes his practice and his knowledge and his skill set to helping leadership educators enhance their practice. Dan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So we start this conversation the same way every time. Dan, what the is leadership?
What in the world is it, Jonathan? So, I really kind of fall into the Barbara Kellerman camp of leadership, thinking about it as a system, of that leadership system that she so profoundly describes it. You got leaders, you got followers, you got context. And, it's always about the situation, it depends, the context, it depends. I certainly think, and probably the close second to that would probably be like the relational leadership model, thinking about relational, ethical people coming together, trying to accomplish some type of positive change. And that's always resonated with me quite a bit. And just getting students to think about leadership as that system and really making sure that they're not just thinking about themselves, although we do have to think about ourselves and have that well-being and that self-care, but then we can take care of followers and those that we work with on our teams and our groups and our organizations, and then we can take care of our stakeholders within our contexts.
Definitely. So, I love this conversation because so often we forget about the followers, but also we forget about taking care of ourselves. That leadership in our collective psyche, at least in the pop culture stuff, is all about being out in front and doing the work and leading, directing, mobilizing, telling, whatever the verb is. But there's a lot that has to be done with our internal disposition, but also how we engage followers and focusing on the follower development in addition to context. So how do you, in your classrooms, in your developmental experiences, in your educational opportunities, really help folks focus on that follower piece?
Yeah, that follower piece or followership, as we love to call it, and certainly followership education. Had an opportunity to co-author a chapter in Recent New Directions for Student Leadership, which great publication. You all should definitely check that out as well. And thank you for the shout out, Jonathan, about the book that Kathy Guthrie and I co-authored together. Followership's one of these. I guess for better or for worse, almost like it's a dirty word in the leadership industry because people want to lead. They don't want to follow. You ask a bunch of kids, hey, who wants to lead? Everybody wants to be a leader, but who wants to follow? And so that's always that first step. That's always the first challenge for leadership / followership educators is getting over that. And leadership. Everyone has requisite knowledge in leadership. Like they've seen leaders, they know who leaders are, but followers, you're like, I don't want to follow, And so it's really trying to break that mold of, okay, check it out. Like followers both support and challenge their leaders. And that's a pretty cool place to be. And that really is, that's Ira Shalev's courageous followership model.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to not only support leaders, for whatever it is, with respect to the common purpose or the common vision of an organization or group or movement or what have you, but also being able to have some candor and say like, hey, leader, like, that's not cool, man, or woman or whoever, and being able to do that with tact. And I think that's always been a really, really great approach. Is once you can get past that chasm, then you can start to incorporate, here are some strategies for what to do it. And more often than not, and there's some great learning activities around this, is, if you put up a list of great qualities of a follower, you can always trick your students to say, oh, well, that's great qualities for a leader. And then you say, guess what? These are also great qualities for a follower. And so there's certainly some creative approaches. And I think we're just kind of on the cusp of what that looks like. The companion manual, the instructor's guide that we wrote for the role of leadership educators as well, we included an activity. Well, I say we had over 40 contributing co-authors, but there is a learning activity that focuses on teaching followership for each of the, I guess, 7, 8, 9, I can't remember exactly how many different instructional strategies that we organized the book by. So, followership case study, followership simulation, followership, using art as pedagogy, etc. So definitely check that out.
Well, I also like how you talk about, based on Kellerman's work, this leadership system. But systems are complex, and nobody really likes wading into complexity. And so how do you, as I said earlier, a leadership educator, how do you prepare not only leaders, but leadership educators to dive into the complexity and live in that space, knowing that the outcomes are going to be so much better than if we just stick to the leader-centric notions of leadership?
Yeah, I think systems thinking is where we're at now as a leadership discipline. We absolutely are going to be more effective as leaders and followers if we have a good sense of what is this context that we find ourselves in, what is this system that we find ourselves in. There's a great activity. I think we wrote about it. I think it's in Kathy and I's book. I don't remember, but it's one of the favorite activities that I have students in our graduate course complete. Is literally I have them draw their organization as if the different departments or units or areas or whatever were like cogs in a machine, to get them that visual imagery of okay, let's say it's a university. Okay, you've got the registrar over here, you've got financial aid moving over here, you've got admissions and the students, and and once they can start to see, oh, okay, I get how this all comes together now, and it really it's sticky as heck, and I think that is where it's at, and all the major challenges and issues that we're facing as a society today. These are complex, challenges that we have to be adaptive when we try to take them on, and whether it be, mask mandates or, DEIJ issues. These are not black and white technical challenges. These are these adaptive challenges that Heifetz and Graskin-Alinsky talk about.
Totally. And they're not going to be solved by our antiquated or historical leadership practices. That it's going to take new waves, new forms of engaging in leadership to be able to navigate and hopefully come out on the better side of these challenges. I also love you keep raising these experiential learning activities. Share with us, why is it so important in leadership education to root our learning opportunities in experiential methods rather than traditional lectures?
Thinking my jam, Jonathan. It's leadership it's reflective in nature. We learn from our experiences. You can, most rudimentary thing you can do in a leadership class is ask somebody to, hey, who's had a good boss? Okay, who's had a bad boss? Great. What was that like? Tell me a little bit more about that. Or, hey, have you ever given somebody feedback? Have you ever received feedback? These are all experiences that we can relate to, and I'm very much a student of the constructivist point of view. In fact, I always love to joke with students during the when we do the what is leadership first day of class kind of discussion, and gosh, almost every class that I've taught that focuses on not group dynamics, but focusing on leadership is the main theme is that, hey, you want to fascinate your friends and wow them at your next dinner party. We're going to learn the word social constructivism today, and getting them to understand leadership is constructed by society. We know good leadership when we see it. We know bad leadership when we see it, and it's all because of the experiences we've had, and that diversity of our experiences is what's so important in that leadership education approach. approach, is that we've got to talk about it, we've got to discuss it, which is why discussion is the most widely used instructional strategy, which is a form of experiential learning. I mean, we're literally talking about, experiences that we've had, but an extension of that is, okay, well, so we've talked about or you've learned something from your peers. Now, next time you're in a similar situation, you've got something to make sense of. You've got something to reflect on. And, hey, let me try this differently. Or, hey, you know what Jonathan was saying in class that day, it really had me thinking about how I might approach this with my boss differently. And you've completed the cold loop.
Yeah, well, I love that. The way I shared in my educational settings and training sessions is that the experiential learning activities enable our participants, our students, to access the educational material, the lesson. But then the reflective dialogue, and the emphasis is on the dialogue, is where our participants or students internalize that information because of their own processing, but also hearing it from peers and how the peers are reflecting on this material, both of which then allow for our participants or students to put into practice, to apply their learning beyond the classroom bubble, which is where our learning should be going rather than just staying within the classroom. So I love that.
I love to say to students, hey, check this out. You know what? You literally are forming new connections in your brain when you are able to discuss and dialogue around relevant experiences that are connecting something that you've experienced to some concept that we're discussing in class.
I love it. Well, Dan, this has been fantastic. I love to give our guests the last word. So if there's something else that you'd like to share about what the leadership is, the floor is yours.
Oh my goodness, what in the world is it? I mean, as I shared, leaders, followers, and contacts. I mean, I think as a leadership educator, the goal is always, let's give other leadership educators the tools that they need to facilitate that change that they want to see in the world. And so that's always, I think that's what gets me up, every day to be on the faculty lines here, and it's what brings me a lot of joy.
Well, wonderful. Dan, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, your insight. I deeply, deeply appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thanks for joining this conversation on what the leadership is. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to this channel and don't forget to check out leadershiptrainer.org for all of your leadership training, programming, and resources.